Okay.
It is so hard to find good help. You know, it's just fun.
Oh, let us pray. Eternal God, again, we give you praise and honor for this day, for allowing us to lie down and to rise up in safety, for traveling the highways and the byways in safety, for giving us peace as we come into your home. Now, guys, we begin this Bible study. We ask that you would be in the midst, that you would open every mind, every heart, and give us an understanding of your word. Help us to know Nehemiah and the choices and decisions that he made to build your wall as we try to build St. Luke's. Be with those that are here this morning and be with those that are on their way and even those that have no desire. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So, we are in Nehemiah, the second chapter. In the first chapter, we found out a little bit about Nehemiah. Not a whole lot, but a little bit in the fact that
That's not Jesus.
That's mine.
we don't went,
Something changed my ringtone and I just don't know.
yeah, we don't went from the Tennessee whiskey to that sounds like
I know, I love
sounds
Tennessee
like ice
whiskey.
creams.
I lost Tennessee whiskey. It's just Walgreens telling me my prescription is ready.
Like she's gonna sell us ice cream or something, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of good, didn't it?
But at any rate, so we found Nehemiah had one of the highest jobs in the court. He was the cupbearer. In other words, he had to sample all the drink before the king. So that was a very prestigious job. It was a job that you can't easily get away from. You know, nobody wants their cupbearer to leave. Nobody wants to be.
Nobody wants to take the
Nobody
job.
wants that job.
Who wants that job, right?
She'll do it.
So the king put his life in Nehemiah's hands, and that's literal. Because if Nehemiah didn't drink the drink, or die from drinking the drink, then you know, what about the king? So we touched on a little bit. And in the beginning, chapter 1, Nehemiah was informed of the troubles that was coming on his people that had been scattered, right? So he had this beautiful prayer to God. So now we get into chapter 2. This is where Nehemiah is sent to Judah. He is sent to Judah. In the month of Nisan. All right, what is the month of Nisan?
March to April.
March to April?
Yeah.
Because we said, Kislev, yeah.
November to
was November to
November
December.
to December, yeah.
So now we're in March to April. So in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was served him, I carried the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had never been sad in his presence before. So the king said to me, "Why is your face sad, since you are not sick?" How often does a king ask a servant about their feelings?
No, they don't care.
No. Right. It really doesn't matter.
Plus, like your boss.
But if we look at this king, especially with regards to our king, kind of the same, doesn't he? Because God asked, was it Abel? No. Who did he ask? Why is your countenance fail? He told him, don't let the countenance fall. But in the same instance, God frequently checks on you. Why are you in a state Why are you feeling the way you feel? That's not a literal conversation that he has with you, but in some form or fashion, someone checks on you. Why are you feeling like that? Right? Since you're not sick, he says, this can only be sadness of the heart. Now I'm reading from the New Interpreter's Bible. So it's not the King James, it's not the Revised Standard. It's a little different. Then I was very much afraid. I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my ancestors' graves, lie waste, and its gates have been destroyed by fire? Then the king said to me, what do you request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. Then I said to the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor with you, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my ancestors' grave, so that I may rebuild it. The king said to me, the queen also was sitting beside him. How long will you be gone, and will you return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a date. Then I said to the king, if it pleases the king, let letters be given to me, to the governors of the provinces beyond the river, that they may grant me passage until I arrive in Judah. And a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, directed him to give me timber and to make beams for the gates to be of the temple fortress, and for the walls of the city, and for the house that I shall occupy. And the king granted me what I asked, for the gracious hand of my God was upon me. What do you feel when you read this? When you hear this, what comes to mind?
A lot of trusting.
It's a lot of trust.
And a lot of asking too. Not just let me go, but let me go and give me safe conduct letters and then take all these resources in the area.
And a lot of faith in God that he's going to listen to him and not say, be gone with you.
Yeah.
And this king has been there a long time, 20 years. That's a long time back then.
In the 20th year, that's right. He has been there for a while, and you find that Nehemiah has found favor. You've got to have found some. You've got to have made some kind of mark, some kind of impression upon the king first, if he is noticing your spirit, noticing your sorrow, noticing your body language.
It also seems to me he's really thought it through. What is he going to need? And that, as you write it, that is a lot to ask, but it's very specific too. So he's had to plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And he says because the hand of God is upon him. It's his faith in God that lets him do this in the first place. Go to the king. It's his faith in God that gives him the courage to go to the king.
okay.
And the king must see beyond that, must see that this is part of God's working or something, because he even offers more help to him than he asks for.
Exactly. You asked to go to your ancestors' city, go to Judah. At the same time you're going to Judah, you need a letter. You want a letter that will allow you to pass each kingdom you come into. That's all he wanted. But again, the king did more than that, right? Mm-hmm. He sent a letter to your man that handles all your timbers. He sent him to the keeper of the forest and told him to give him timber to make beams for the gate, beams for the walls and beams for the house that he was living in, that he was to occupy.
And then he said, army officers and people to protect him.
Well, right now we're just in these first 8 verses. That's all that was asked.
Mm-hmm.
Or really, that's what was provided. Those were the provisions that was provided. Now, we don't know how big the house was that he built, right? We're not even sure the breadth, the width, and the length or the height of the walls that needed to be replaced. But this was a letter that was sent. This is what he needs. Allow him safe passage. And whatever, because if I'm understanding this, whatever he's in need of when it comes to rebuilding this, the wood products, we're going to provide it. So Nehemiah hadn't even made it to Judah, but he has all the provisions necessary before he even steps out.
And I don't see where it's never really recorded how long a period of time he thought it was going to take.
He never says.
No. He says he gave him a period of time, but it doesn't say.
What that period of time is.
The funny thing is, as I read this commentary, it says, when Nehemiah had prayed for relief for his countrymen, and perhaps in David's words, according to Psalm 51:18, build all the walls of Judah, it says he did not sit still and say, let God now do his own work, for I have no more to do, right? What he did after chapter 1 in praying to God, he then set out a path to get the work done. Not only did he ask God to take care of the people, to take care of the problem, the wall. Remember the words that you commanded your servant Moses. If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are under the farthest skies, I will gather them from them and bring them to a place at which I have chosen to establish my name. They are your servants and your people whom you redeemed by your great power and your strong hand. So, O Lord, let your ears be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give success to your servant today and grant him mercy in the sight of this man. So, he made the prayer to God to grant him mercy in the sight of this man. In the sight of this man, I would say he was asking for a favor in speaking to the king, right? So when he got to the king, what did he find? There was more than favor. I need to leave you for a while, king. I need to go home. And in my travels home, I need letters that say it's okay for me to pass. Because in essence, he was a slave. And the onus was he was a top-ranking slave. He was a high official slave. Simply because you are my life. If something happened, if you're not there to make sure that I'm not poisoned, anybody can pull the wool over my eyes. So you have a very high trusted position. Right? He says, what do you say? He brought the king his wine, right? Yeah. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Kings Artaxerxes, when the wine was served him I carried the wine and gave it to the king. In other words, that's letting you know what his job was as a cupbearer. They would fill the cup. He would take it to the king. That's his position. To make sure that the king was not poisoned with liquid, with wine. So now I'm asking, I need to leave you for a while. No king in their right mind is going to say, oh, go ahead. I got another one. Go ahead. First of all, it takes a lot of trust. You have to build trust in somebody that's sampling your food, that's sampling your wine, that's cooking your food. There is trust that has to be built over, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's years that you have to build up this trust that who you have doing this for you is looking out for you. So, Nehemiah has prayed to God that the king would find favor in what he has got to do. And just like that, the king notices his countenance is not right. There's a problem. And he sets out to try to help him. He says, I know you're not sick. So this is a problem of the heart. What's wrong? How often is somebody your closest friend? How often do people you know can tell when you're not in your best space? And actually care. So we've got friends that know when we're not in our right space, right? They might ask a question, what's wrong? But how often do they act upon that asking?
Actions speak louder.
Yeah. What's wrong? Oh, you get over it.
Get over
Take 2 aspirin or go take a nap. Get your feet up.
Go to bed.
Thanks.
But this king generally cared. He asked the question. So in doing that, you find that, first of all, when you pray to God and you ask for things, sometimes you have to be able to put your faith in action. Because faith is an action word. You have to put it into action. I trust you to do it. And if there's anything I can do to help, then let me be on my way about getting it done. Because ultimately what we want to say is, this is my problem. You handle it, God. I'm waiting on you. Right? And then when things don't happen, we had our feet up on the desk and everything just passed by. So Nehemiah is saying that when you ask for stuff, when you're putting prayer, when you're asking God to do stuff, be willing to get your hands dirty. When you have a problem with somebody, again, you have to be willing to go and make it right. God's not just going to smooth the waters. You have to put forth an effort to make things correct. So here, he's had to be willing to say, look, I need to leave. I don't know how long we'll be gone, but I need to go. Verse 9 says, Then I came to the governor of the province beyond the river. Let's see if I got a different reading.
I have the governors of the Trans-Euphrates.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I have too.
It's just,
Trans-Euphrates. What is Trans-Euphrates?
Across the river.
The river.
Euphrates River, yeah.
Well,
Well, it would be like a province.
He's gonna
Didn't you
cross
say at the
over.
beginning?
Yeah, the province beyond the river. So that was the name of the province, beyond the river. It's highlighted in my, it's in bold in my Bible, but I just want to make sure that's what it says.
The world is flat.
Different translation reads the same way. Look, I didn't even turn on. My wife hadn't texted me, so I guess she's not on. Yeah, oh well, whatever. It is what it is. So, beyond the river, and gave them the king's letter. So he's made his way through the provinces, the governors, beyond the river, and he's given each king the letters. Now the king had sent officers of the army and cavalry with me. So that says a whole lot more about Nehemiah. That's where Judy would come on in verse 9, where the king not only sent letters to allow Nehemiah to pass, but he sent his army to go with him. That says a lot.
Good king.
That says a lot. You trust your servant that much. You have that much respect for your servant that not only do you give him letters, but you send an army with him. What does it say about God? Because understand, if we pull this into today's time, this king would be God. We have a situation, and not only does God send notification ahead or provide us with a pass for each obstacle that comes up, but we also have a host of angels that are walking with us.
That's like when he says, I will give you what you need when you need it. But you have to trust.
You gotta trust.
Gotta have faith. I mean, when he went to talk to the king, he had no idea. I mean, he was praying because God was on his side, but the king was going to let him go, but he had no idea that the king was going to provide so much for him.
So what does that tell you?
All things are possible.
All things are possible with God, and you have to trust God.
And God can move others to provide you the help you need too.
He will protect us.
He will protect.
I think about this that you're having us read now in relationship to how does it compare to how this congregation has gone about building a new or remodeling this whole place. I mean, it makes no sense if you think about it. Because why would we need more space? There aren't that many of us.
Talk about it. Keep going.
But the fact of the matter is that if we trust in God, we know that this building, through all of the, okay, now what's happening? And what? That doesn't make sense. It's going to happen, and it happens because those of us who believe and who work toward it are the Nehemiahs, I guess, in terms of we're going to make this work and God's going to help us. I mean, if you look at every possible thing that did go wrong, we weathered those storms. We did not step aside. We didn't say, oh crap, that was a stupid idea to begin with. Let's just stay the same. And it seems to me the other thing is that it really doesn't have anything to do with the building. It has to do with the fact that we have a mission to perform, and we need the space in order to get that mission going and a success. And that's the reason for the new building. So that's what I think.
God has a plan, has a purpose. And in order for us to walk and live into that purpose and his plan, we have to first of all get out of his way. We have to be willing to do the work, but we have to get out of his way. God had a purpose. God had a plan to have that wall rebuilt. And Nehemiah's purpose was to rebuild the wall. So every obstacle God had already overcome for him. You need letters to get beyond the river. First of all, you got to get the permission of the king, and the king has to have a heart to let you go. So you've done this for the king all these years. He softened the king's heart to the point of the king went above and beyond what was asked. Yes.
Do you think, and it's funny too that the king wasn't, didn't care about what other people thought of him doing that for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He might have thought that he's not going to look good, like giving in like that.
Favor.
No?
Favoring him.
Favoring him.
Right.
Why is he doing all this for a slave type of person? You know?
So again,
Might look weak.
those things have to be taken into consideration, because as I read this passage, this text said that the queen was sitting right beside the king. So not only did the king give his seal of approval, but the queen stamped it herself.
And did women have a lot of power?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, were they considered?
not really, but understand,
Power
she
over him.
is a queen. So her voice, her word carries weight. It has merit.
She could have leaned
She
over
has
and said,
influence.
Right. She
people
has
are gonna
influence.
fry you if you do this.
Yeah. But she agreed as well.
Right. There was no back and forth. It was like, okay. And as I read it, it's like, okay, who knows? She could have been the reason why the temple was cut down. No one knows. And she could have been the reason why the guards were sent with him.
They don't even mention her name, so it wasn't like she was a very.
It does in the footnotes.
It
Huh?
doesn't
It mentions her name in the footnotes.
What's her name?
The main, I just saw it somewhere.
Damaspa?
Damocus or something like that.
Damasphia.
Yeah, there it is.
Damaspia.
Damaspia.
Would she have had the power to
Yeah.
disagree with him if she wanted? I mean, how was that back?
Used her
She have
influence.
said, I don't agree?
What did she say? What did you
She
say?
could,
It said, Damasphasia may have used her influence with the king. That's all it says about her.
Maybe.
Well, I think very seldom. in the
Oh, he
Bible
had
is
3
the queen,
concubines too.
yeah.
Concubines.
Oh, he had 3 concubines?
That's all.
They don't
Something
mention the
like
queen
that.
most of the time when they talk about the king.
Yeah, most of the
It's
time,
unusual.
biblically, they don't mention women.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
But
They're just an extension of the male.
yeah, but if he's out, she does have power. Her word carries weight.
She has influence.
Right, she has influence.
It says the-
Someone has power.
It says the Achaemenid court was notorious for the great influence exercised by the royal women. So royal women had power.
Influence.
His father was
influence,
Xerxes.
influence.
His father was Xerxes.
Power.
Xerxes, however you pronounce it. Yeah, the great
Power
king
says
Xerxes.
you
the
will.
Persian Empire.
Influence
Yeah.
says maybe you should.
Right.
You know, another thing that, sorry, you were gonna say something.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is the selflessness. I think about, he asks the question of the king, and he has no idea what the reaction is going to be. For all he knows, the king could say, well, I'm done with you. What do you mean coming here? And think of also how much Nehemiah has to lose.
To lose his life over that.
Yeah.
He's great. He's got the top powers.
He has access to the king.
He's got everything going, and he takes the risk because of his faith in God that the king is going to come through for him.
Yeah, the king will release him and then give
But
him
there
all
was-
his assets.
But there was also that trust that's been built up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know for how long.
You have to figure that there is a friendship and a mutual respect.
Even having that trust and that mutual friendship, he's still a slave.
True.
And think of the times in the Bible in which the examples of a king that turns, goes against when he has it before of people.
Yeah, when power goes to their heads and they get carried away with it. Like today.
So you mentioned the building of St. Luke's, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to go into Nehemiah, because 7+ years you all have been working on this, getting this done. Now, 7+ years, you all have been a cohesive, tight church until for a brief period in which the church has been scattered. Right? Same thing here. Some of the children of Israel have been scattered. So to build this, he's trying to bring everybody back together. That's what this is, to bring them back together. We're working on bringing St. Luke's back together, making us whole again. And this can only happen if we come together as one to make this happen. It's not Miss Judy doing all the work. Can't Miss Weedy doing a little bit of the work, or Miss Marie doing sitting back with her feet up.
It's hard to imagine.
Yes, it is.
We all have to be on one accord. Don't you get your...
Well, Dr. said I should sit with my
Keep
feet
them elevated, right?
There you go.
We all have to be on one accord and do our part. And that starts with first seeing the vision that God has had. Nehemiah has the vision that God has given him to rebuild the wall, and at the same instance, by having that, he's got the king on his side. The queen is on board. And because of all of those things, he's now able to move forward. You all have laid all the groundwork. Richard laid all the groundwork. And because of the groundwork that was laid, we're able to move forward. Trusting the plan that's already there. So, when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, heard this, it displeased them greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. Isn't that bad?
Israel afraid.
Why?
Israel has risen before. Israel can rise against them again.
Two kings, the Horonite and the Amorite king, was displeased that someone was coming to seek to look after the Israelites, to look after Israel.
They didn't want to lose their power.
They didn't want to
Were
lose
these
power.
actually kings or just like provincial governors?
Probably the provincial governors.
Yeah, because that's why he got the letter from the king. Artaxerxes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have to let him pass.
Sanballat was the governor of Samaria. Sanballat had influential contacts in Jerusalem, and his daughter married one of the high priest's family. Tobiah was probably the governor of Ammon. He may have had some kind of temporary authority over Judah, in cooperation with or under the supervision of the Samaritans. So these were your governors. They were kind of like, what do you call them, lords, or how was England broke up? You had your kings, and you had the king, and then
Like councilmen.
people that had the other little towns or whatever, kind of like our mayors. We got the president, then we got the governor's over the state, then you got your mayors of all little cities.
Well, you get the counties.
Yeah, so it's your mayor over your county, isn't it?
No, the counties are over the mayor. Counties, state, territory, mayors, city, or town.
It says in here that Tobiah took over the storerooms of the temple for his own use. And he's the one who really tried to hinder Nehemiah.
So, we've got two officials that are, don't send it.
Disturbed, it says.
Okay. Whew. I'm sorry. Let me do this because Siri, she just has issues. So we've got two officials, two governors that don't want the boat rocked. That's what it comes down to. I don't want you messing with my people, messing with my slaves. I don't want you messing with what I've got going on. I guess it's all right to say. Let's look at modern day slavery. You have a free slave that wants to marry a slave, and the slave owner don't want you to marry because you're going to interfere with that work that is being done. If I'm getting free labor, I don't want to sell you your wife to make your wife free. Now you all are free. I get more. I get a better profit, a better deal keeping the slave working. Kind of the same thing here. We don't want you coming and building the wall and getting your people back. Because right now, we're in control. We don't want to give you the power. We don't want to pull you to, and again, we're not saying that Sanballat or what it is again? Tobiah, yeah. We don't want to give them we're not saying that they did not know God. But knowing God and still having people work for you is two different things. I don't want to give up my labor. Safe to say. So, Nehemiah, from verse 11 to 16, this is where Nehemiah begins to inspect the wall. Begins to inspect what has to be done. Yeah, fix it. It wasn't God. So I came to Jerusalem and was there for 3 days. Then I got up during the night, I and a few men with me. I told no one what my God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. The only animal I took was the animal I rode. I went out by night by the valley gate, past the dragon springs, and to the dung gate. And I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that had been broken down, and its gates that had been destroyed by fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and the king's pool. But there was no pool for the animal I was riding to continue. So I went up by way of the valley by night and inspected the wall. Then I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing. I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest that were there, and the rest that were to do the work. Nehemiah went out on his own to inspect the job.
Doesn't that seem strange that, I mean, it's not like they had electricity back then with a lot of lights for him to go out into the darkness to inspect the wall.
It could have been moonlight.
Well, not that it was dark out, but that he got up to see the work that needed to be done. He got up while everyone else was sleeping in the dark of night to inspect the job. Why do you think that was?
Because
He didn't want to show his hand.
Didn't want to show his hand?
I was gonna say he hadn't told anybody, and why would he go if he still wanted to keep it kind of under wraps? People can't see him doing that. He can't do it in the daytime. And he needs to know specifically what has to be done.
I think he also knew that those two guys, the Sanballat and Tobiah, if they knew what he was really all about in the beginning, they might have tried to do away with him quickly. I think he needed to gather some help.
Okay.
People, gain the trust of some people and say, here's why I'm here, but I'm gonna need help to get this done. Because he hadn't told anybody else until he had an idea of exactly what was gonna have to be done.
Okay.
You just want an advanced trip.
You want an advanced trip?
Advanced trip, you know what we call it. Security business. You're going to go out and check out what's got to be done.
Well, a couple of things come to mind when I read this piece.
So nobody sees what he's doing.
First of all, have you ever tried to get something done and you got a whole lot of people around you?
Killing editors, yeah.
Everybody has a voice. Everybody want to be heard. Do it this way. Do it that way. So sometimes it's best to survey the job at night where everybody is sleeping so that you can get a feel exactly what has to be done. You don't have anybody else's voice in your head trying to tell you how they think it should be done or what you need to do first. None of that. It's all on you. And secondly, again, if you got two governors that are against you, it's kind of, if you don't really know who all's in your camp, you need to be able to survey the land and get your bearings of what's going on just to see what you can see. Because again, it says he rode out on an animal. The only animal I took was the animal I rode. Doesn't say whether it was a horse, doesn't say whether it was a donkey, it was just, he rode one animal. He didn't take a whole caravan of animals with him because he didn't want to wake up anybody.
My husband was an architect. He did the design work for St. Paul's, the kitchen and social hall. When you go in there, you'll see it.
Okay.
A long time ago. Well, every Sunday at church, somebody would drag him after church and say, why didn't you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way? And you know, he quit going to church until after that building was finished. He would not. It was awful. So maybe Nehemiah knew what he was doing. I know.
Yeah, he's just checking it out. He's doing all the advanced details what he's doing.
Well, this also sounds like something God would do, although it doesn't say that God spoke to him, but it's almost like he would say, get up and go in the middle of the night and do what you need to do. You know, it's almost the way he works. Or it is the way he works. Lots of times he comes to us and says, you need to do this.
In the quiet of the night.
Mm-hmm.
In the still of the night. In the still of the night, that's when God speaks to you the most. If you're listening. When everything is still, everything is quiet, that's when you can hear God the most.
By yourself.
For the most part, yeah. Because you can more or less focus on God's voice. When things are going on in the hustle and bustle of the day, you really can't find a space or a place unless you know how to meditate. Because we get overrun by what's going on. This past weekend was one of the best weekends. It was hustle and bustle, but in the stand, for those couple of hours, there was nothing but quietness. I could hear things rustling in the forest and actually spot it. See what it was, where it was coming from. In the course of the day, the hustle and bustle of the day, if something is going on, you can't focus in on it.
There's machines and people and voices and all kinds of distractions.
And while I'm in there, you get to see some things that you never pay attention to. So when it's just you and there's nothing else going on, God can show you things. God can talk to you and give you things. Because then you can really focus in on God. The morning hunt was good. The night hunt was the best. Why? Because it got dark. And now I've got to really focus in on what's around me. Trying to listen to what's coming and where it's coming from. And all I had was a night scope that lit up so I knew where I needed to focus. And to be able to, I couldn't hear them. I did not, I tell you, I did not hear hog one when they came out of the bushes. Not a sound. I'm listening, you know, I watched enough of these hunting shows where they hunt hogs and you hear the snorts, the grunts and all that. And all of that. I heard nothing. When they came out of the bushes, I didn't hear, it was like they was walking on cotton.
Sneaking up on you.
When do they make those noises then?
When they're eating.
Probably.
Well, they was eating the corn and I still didn't hear it. So it must have been the distance I was from them, but whatever it was, I heard nothing.
Oh, so you had corn out there for them?
Yeah, they had a feeder out.
So they would come
Baby,
begging.
So-
hearing you now.
Yeah, so the feeder went off about 7:30. And between that time, I had a couple of squirrels that ran through. And the only way I realized that something was coming that night was 2 squirrels were there, playing around, and they stopped. One took off, and the other one took off.
Because the pigs were
About
coming.
5 or 10 minutes later, the hogs came out.
Hogs, pigs.
I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So, what I'm saying is, in the still of the night, when it's just you, God can talk to you. You can focus in on God. And that's what Nehemiah is able to do. In the still of the time, with everybody sleeping, he's able to get up and do what needs to be done. He's able to inspect the destruction that is taking place. He said, the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, right? I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest that were to do the work. No one knew what needed to be done. Nehemiah went and surveyed everything. And then he's going to make the assignments. It's funny. When I got here, I told you, y'all need to keep your shoes on, right? We're going to wear out some tennis shoes. We're going to do some work. Rubber will meet the road. Everybody has a job, has a position. Some people have had to step into positions and, be elevated in other positions to get this job done. But no one in St. Luke's is to feel like they do not have something to do. I've heard someone say, Pastor don't do anything, he delegates.
That's a good manager.
Yeah.
It's been said, you don't do anything, you do a lot of delegation. But if I don't delegate, then you all will not take ownership of this church. And if you don't have ownership in the church, then it is not yours.
And then when you leave, which you will eventually, it will all fold if you're the only one who does it.
Right. So if everyone has a position, has something to do,
That's ownership.
St. Luke's will go on even after I go. So my job is to see the work that has to be done and put the right people in position to carry out the work.
I guess it makes me sad that one of the people who in our congregation says something like that.
Oh, I love it.
Do
I love it. Never let that get to you. I love it because you know that at least when you look at it, the work gets done. And there are more people getting the work done than just me. So if I don't delegate, then what does that say? I'm not a good leader.
And you don't have trust.
I know.
It still makes me mad.
Don't let it get to you.
That's
What
your
makes you
right.
mad?
But give it to God.
What makes
Just
you
let
mad?
him take care of it.
The nerve.
The person who
Hello?
would say that, she's saying
Say what?
about him not doing anything.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll have to work on that because I think people should just shut up and do the work and use their energy to do that.
It's
contribute.
usually those that don't want to help.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
talk
They
about
can,
those
they
who
can
are.
sit back and watch everybody else speak.
Oh, I'm furious.
Don't let it get to you. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Let it go.
That's it. Let it go.
It only hurts you, it does not hurt them.
Right. Again, what did he say?
I'm gonna have to work at it.
Where I was going and what I was doing, I had not told anybody. I do a lot of work, just not up front. I'm always behind the scene. I've been doing that since I was in high school. Back when I used to produce a TV show when I was in high school. I did a whole lot of stuff. I got tired of being in the front acting, so I kind of pull back now and do things underneath, behind the scenes.
Master manipulator.
Hey, hey. Let's keep moving. We're at the end of this piece. I'm loving it. All right. So, decision to restore the walls. Then I said to them, okay? So now he's back. He's got the Jews, he's got the priests, he's got the nobles, the officials, and everybody else that is to do the work. He's back now and he says, you see the trouble we're in? How Jerusalem lies in ruins with the gates burned? Come, let us rebuild the walls of Jerusalem so that we may no longer suffer disgrace. I like that. He said, I told them that the hand of my God had been gracious upon me and also the words that the king had spoken to me. Why would that make a difference? Why would people need to hear that piece? That the hand of God is upon you and that the words of the king were gracious.
He had authority to start building.
And validation.
That's supposed to add fear too. No.
Not out of fear.
No, just
It's
validation.
validation. Again, what you say?
Authority.
It gives them authority, but more or less it's more validating that the work that we're doing has been validated not only by God, let's back it up, not only by the king, but by God. God has put his hand on what we got to do because you're talking about Jews, priests, nobles, and officials. You have to please all of those people. You can't not leave out one of them because all of them have influence. First of all, you're Jewish. So you got to appease your Jewish people. You got to appease the nobles, the nobility, those high ups. People in the church. You got to appease high ups in the church, right? The officials. You got to appease those people that have positions. Let's work this out. If we, I might get in trouble.
I'll go for it.
this thing backwards because we've got the rest of them that are to do the work. The rest of those that are to do the work is your congregation. It's your congregation. The rest have to do the work. We are the hands and feet. We have to do the work of God. We've got the officials. Those are the people that have positions, that have titles. Right? Some folks have titles in name only because they're not doing the work. We'll leave that for another Sunday. Another Tuesday, yes.
Or Sunday, and then you really.
Yeah, then I'll really be in trouble, right?
We should do that on Sunday.
Tuesday's discussion should lead to Sunday's service.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
You just want to leave next week.
Yeah. I know we're not Baptists, but we can act like them, really can't. Preach on this Sunday and fire next Sunday. Then you've got the nobles. Now, have you all ever heard of key culture bearers in the church?
What was it?
Heard of what?
Key culture bearers.
Oh, key culture.
Culture barriers.
Bearers.
Key culture bearers.
Bearers?
Bearers.
Oh, no, I haven't.
No, I'm not very baptized.
So key culture. So
What do you think that sounds like? What this says?
in this day and age,
Quasi-leaders of the church?
Say what?
The self-appointed quasi-leaders of the church?
Quasi-leaders of the church.
Because it's always been done that way and we should do it that way. That's what it sounds like.
Okay. I like those two put together. Let's put it in real terms. Those are the people that are behind the scenes that know they don't have a title or a position. They're the ones that run the church. If you want anything to get done, you talk to them. I don't care what your title or position is. These are the folks that really run the church, financially and through word. And believe me, in most of your churches, there are people that nothing happens unless they say it's okay. You may never see them in church ever.
so how would you know who they were then?
The church members know. It's who the congregation speaks to.
It's who they look to
That's right.
We
Those are
have
the ones that they
for
look to.
advice.
At the end of the year, he always gave any money that was needed to pay apportionments or anything. They would always call him at the end, the treasurer, and let him know what we needed. And every time
Take care.
And
He
a lot of people knew he did it.
That's right. He was a key culture bearer. He took care, he ran the church behind the scenes. The preacher did his job. As one of my members told me years ago, you're nothing but a hired hand.
The front man.
There you go. Yeah. That's how it was looked at. You're a front man. You're the hired hand. This is your position. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
You've got the nobles, the key culture bearers that tell everybody else really what to do. They sit on the very head and everything trickles down. Then you've got the officials who have the titles. And then you've got the congregation that does the work. That's who Nehemiah had to speak to, who he had to appease. He had to reach each one of these persons in order to get the job done. He had to let them know that I'm not the one that's talking about this, but this is God sent. Once the key culture bearers, the nobles, the officials, and the officers, the priests, the pastors, the preachers, and everyone else understand that it is God ordained what happens in the church, and we follow what God says, that's when the church begins to move and grow like it's supposed to. But if any one of those decides to upset the apple cart, we have problems.
Things screech to it. Standstill.
To a star. Because if you don't do what I want done, I'm going to take my ball and leave. And And most of the time, that's what happens when the church, that's how churches stop, because somebody takes their ball and leaves. The church depended too much on that person or that group of people. So when they took their toys, nothing else happened. So again, I don't mind being a delegate, because I need all of you all to have a voice in the church. Everybody's toys is invited. Everybody's voice is necessary. So he told them. Says, then I said to them, you see the troubles, how Jerusalem lies in ruins with the gates burned. Come, let us rebuild the walls of Jerusalem so that we may no longer suffer disgrace. He told them that the hand of my God had been gracious upon him, and also the words of the king had spoken to me, the favor that was shown. Then he said, let us start building. So they committed themselves to the common good. When I came and told you all the plan, the vision, the mission of the church, how easy was it for you all to get on board? Talk to me. Come on.
For some easier than others.
For some easier than others. But on the whole, having the vision made it a whole lot easier to get on board than not having a vision. If I came in and said, what do y'all want to do? What do you think happens?
Nobody does anything.
No,
There,
right.
there's nothing inspiring about that.
Right. And then I end up with 60 different desires of what they want to get done, and they all clash and nothing happens. So when I come in with a clear vision of what has been given to me, because believe me, when I got here, the last 4 appointments that I've had, 3 appointments, there was really no vision of what needed to transpire. I'm sorry, the last 4 appointments. Last 4 appointments, 3 appointments, there was no desire of what needed to be done when I got there.
I guess my first reaction to the hospital idea was, I need to know more. I'm not sure where that would lead us. It's not my vision, so I couldn't wrap my head around it for a while. And so I just sort of thought, well, we'll see how this goes. I don't know.
So now,
Not in a negative way at all. Just, I'm not the kind of person that jumps in if I don't know pretty much what's going to be happening.
So now how do you feel?
How do I feel? You should quit delegating things to people. I'm sorry, I just had, it's a healing for me.
Oh, why?
But you like being a historian, right, Pam?
Can I be honest?
That was delegated to you.
Can I be honest?
Please.
There's something wrong with my vision.
That makes it difficult.
You don't have 2020? I don't either.
I think there's something about wanting to hear people talk about the church and their experience in it that to me is the story of this church. It's not the building, it's not the finances, it's none of that. But I'm not able to get people to talk. They don't. I think one of the things is I say, story, but story is everything. Any communication is a story.
John's the only one who wants to do that.
He is, and he's fabulous. And we had walk in the graveyard. I've never had so much fun in the graveyard in all my life.
So here's the best way to broach where you're coming up. Tell me your experiences here. Because see, when you ask somebody to tell you their story, they really don't know what you wanted to hear. But when you ask somebody to tell me your experiences here, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and sit down and watch what happens. Because now you've given them parameters. You've opened them up to what needs to be done. The same as Nehemiah. This is what has to happen. I've already walked the property. You need to do this. We got to do that. We got to do this. We need to do this. The same here with our mission. This is what we want to do. Now, like I told Judy this morning, when I looked at the tables that she laid out to fix the food, to prepare the bags, that's 5 families. I can see 15 easy now. But we gotta wait until we get the space set up and then put the assembly line together.
Well, here's what I'm doing for my newsletter. I've given a story that some people have heard already. It's John's story about 1940 hurricane. And they were in the church. I hear him tell that story a lot, and I thought, never heard it.
Have you ever talked to Pat Simmons about her family history in this cemetery?
Yeah, and but I need to do more thinking myself. People are busy. It would take some time.
You'd have to sit down one-on-one and interview.
Absolutely, and it's one of the things that the Methodist manual for a guide to the church historian says.
We need to try to get our information in the history, try to get the historical award for the church also. So you got more work to do. But speak to some of the folks who has family in the cemetery. Right.
Okay,
Because I know you probably received the email from the lady whose family member has that piece of wood.
No, I've not seen that.
Talk to Jack.
Yeah, we'll talk.
And I think that's another thing, as long as you ask me. I'm sure you'll regret it now. But I think there's not enough coordination in this church in terms of I don't tap it in a way that
You're not commanding coordination.
I'm not. And I mean, that's a story that automatically people should think of. That needs to go to the historian. And they just don't.
But for so many years,
I know.
certain
I've
things
been
happen.
thinking somebody else needs to do the historian's job. Because I'm not getting anywhere with it. And
But it'll
You
come.
need to dive in.
Right. It'll come.
Get your feet wet and dirty.
It'll come. You know what?
I'm going to delegate that.
Go ahead. You call and you leave a message and you tell them, I need a story. And if I don't get it, I'm calling you every day until I do.
There you go.
Give me a story.
Well, hopefully John's example in the newsletter will trigger. And you're right. I came in with the wrong attitude. I just assumed that everybody loved this little church so much that they would want more and more information.
I think the more information you get, the more they're going to love it and want to
add
to it.
Sometimes you got to do outside information to trigger inside thought.
Well, you'll see what you think of the article.
And,
It'll be good.
Jack Reed, he gets talks to a lot of visitors out here that come to see family.
I need to get together with Jack too. And
Yeah.
we've talked about that, we just haven't.
And he loves talking about it because he loves this cemetery.
So let's finish this up.
Sorry, anyway, I love the idea of the hospital, which is your initial correction.
That was in this.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I just went off on a tangent there.
So, But when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Amorite official, when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Amorite official, and Geshem, the Arab, heard of it, they mocked and ridiculed us, saying, "What is this that you're doing? You're rebelling against the king." Then I replied to them, "The God of heaven is the one who will give us success. And we, his servants, are going to start building, but you have no share or claim or historic right to Jerusalem."
And it's like he just leaves it there.
I know.
There's no response from them. Like, oh, okay, we're on now.
He can't even walk off. Take that. So, again, as we look at this piece, everybody has now committed themselves to doing the work. Everybody, for the most part, at St. Luke's has committed themselves to the work of the church, to the mission of the church, to the remodeling of the church, to the upkeep of the facilities, the grounds, and everything. There is new commitment that has taken place that has been transformed into this body, to this hospital. And there are still folks out there that don't want to see us achieve our goals.
Why?
They don't like change.
Why would that be?
Folks don't want change. They want things to stay the way they are.
Even if they don't maybe like it that way.
Right.
And they're too afraid they're going to get pulled
They'll be-
into doing something.
They'll either be pulled
There you
into
go.
something or they will be moved out of something.
Yes. That.
It's
For-
kind of like people who have to sit in the same pews all the time. I do, just because it's there and it's open, but if I have to move, it doesn't bother me. But there are people that,
I got squatted stripes on that one corner.
In my second appointment, my smaller church, when I got there, I think for the first 6 months, I observed how everyone sat in church. We had 2 outside and 1 center. So I had, 2 aisles to go down. But I had outside here, outside set of pews here, and then I had a center pew. And church was kind of like ours, 60 members on a row, but you might get 20, 30, 45 on a good Sunday. Can you imagine you got that many people spread out across the church? I've got maybe 15 on this pew and 15 on the outside pews, and then you got about 15 in the middle set. And I'm talking a church that would seat 120. Can you imagine how that looks? You stand at the pulpit, you look out there, and you're like, wow, where's everybody? So what I did, for 6 months, I observed where everybody sat. So one Sunday I turned around, I told everybody, I said, all right, I can tell where each and every one of you all are sitting. And I proceeded to talk to folks where they sat. So I said, here's what we're going to do. No longer can you sit on the outside pews. No one. Those will be for our guests. Everybody else has to move to the middle. You know I got pushed back.
Sure.
Why?
I've been sitting here, my family's been sitting here, and this is our pew.
Yes. But you know what? They moved.
They didn't like it, but
They didn't like it, but they moved. Now,
So
2 weeks later, I had to go out of town.
they all went back.
Guess what?
They all went back.
They moved back. And somebody told me. They blamed it on one of the members. And y'all know, I don't mind calling anybody out, right? Y'all already know. I call your name from the pulpit. So I called her name. It was so funny.
At St. Paul's, they go into Sunday school and they'll get their bulletin. They walk in the front and there's bulletins all over their seats. And you don't sit
Yeah,
in
so
a
you don't
nice
sit there.
seat.
They hold in the spot.
Or,
They
right,
hold in
or
the
their
spot.
sweater or something. They put it, oh yeah.
It's at Pastor Richard's church in Hardyville. His podium is on the, as you look up, he's on the right, whereas you're in the center. And when he's on the right, he said, we went one Sunday, he goes, why is it everyone sits over there and not on the right side of the church? So they don't want to sit in front of him, he sits on the left. It's like, so I almost said to him, well, why don't you move in the
I think
middle?
it's because they might doze off during.
Yeah, they don't wanna see him grow.
Now,
And then they don't sit up front, they sit like in the back.
Well, for many years, when I came to this church, I sat in the front row with my two friends that I'd met through choir. Anyway, sat there for many years and I loved it because I love having that little extra thing to lay your book on and all that stuff. That was good.
Yeah.
One day I came in and Pat had decided that's where she's going to record from.
Mm-hmm.
so you
Well, there it is. I'm like, oh, where was
I lost my place.
But I found another seat and I'm just fine.
Maybe one Sunday morning, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna shake everybody up. Once I let you all out of your pews, I'm gonna make y'all switch places. Just to see
You
what
won't even let us have to greet each other. What do you think?
I said when I let y'all free, I'm gonna make y'all greet each other and swap.
It's like a classroom.
Yeah, right,
I
exactly.
sat, like,
And
I
the
sat
students sit in the
up
same
front
spot all the
next to your
time.
mom one time.
And if you, and then you want to be up
Coffee
front
in
because
here.
boy,
And then
I can see them better.
moved to a different seat because like Amy is hitting somebody or somebody else came and sat in my place. So I moved around unwillingly.
And you're allowed to
You
talk.
see her, you see the look on her face when
Yeah.
she's talking about it, right?
You're alive.
I didn't know we had names on the pews.
No, there used to be.
So,
Really?
Some places.
Names?
You used to buy your pew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Back in the day, rich people got to buy the front ones.
So-
Sometimes
Which
people
makes no
have
sense.
bought that pew. That's how they raised money in the church for pews. A family would buy a pew.
yes, yes.
Oh, we have names. Yeah, we did that. Paid
Yeah.
for plates and put
Yeah.
them on. But it's for your loved one. It wasn't really. But usually it's on the pew where your family.
Where your family sits,
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is what's happening here. Nehemiah is telling these three governors, because I like the words that they say. What is this you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king? Now,
He had a letter from the king.
he's already got approval from the king to do what he's doing. He's got approval from the ultimate king, the king of kings, to do what he's doing. So what issue is it with these three governors that makes them feel like he's doing something wrong?
It's like he says, be gone.
I think infringement and then it's men that he's gonna require to help build and the resources like that forestry. They have an interest in those things.
Right. So, first of all, you're infringing upon our space. You're going to make our people want to leave, our help. You're enticing them to leave, to stand up and rebel against us. So, this is it right here.
But then it says Elijah had went ahead anyway and they went to work.
Say it again.
Well, they did eventually go to work in the 3rd chapter here it says.
Yeah,
The high
but-
priest.
This is before he gets done. He's having to deal with three governors who don't want. Huh? Bless you. Yeah. He's dealing with three governors that don't want to see the wall of Jerusalem rebuilt.
Mhm.
See, with the wall down, Israel's not strong. With the wall down, Israel is scattered and you got some of the Israelites. With the wall down, you are all powerful. But it's different when the wall is up. When Jerusalem is protected, you can't really get in.
I have a picture here if you want to see it of the wall.
What you got?
No, it's really nice looking.
It's an artist conception picture, or whatever you call it.
Okay. That's up on here, isn't it? Yep. Yep.
And Jerusalem sits on it.
Oh, I see now.
Here you go. There's a picture, there's a portion of it
Oh, wow.
in the right. So, as we're beginning to look at this rebuilding, I want y'all to hear me because this is getting ready to happen. Hopefully by the end of this week, we should have the architect should have the drawings. It should have came yesterday. Huh?
The mechanicals.
The mechanical, the electrical, the
Man, it's not, they just kept
Plumbing
building.
and the HVAC. All of those should have been turned in. So I've got to get with George to see if that happens.
Pass it around.
But again,
Yeah.
you're going to find as we're going into this building, as it really begins to take shape, there's going to be some pushback. What do you think the main reason is going to be for the pushback?
Money?
Money.
It's
They have
always
a
about
pretty
money.
good start, don't they?
Oh, we got an excellent start.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I
you,
thought.
construction's usually, costs usually can last, right?
It's an excellent start. But that is going to be the main argument, the main crux of contention is the cost. But if I'm not saying that we should just go willy-nilly and not be good stewards of our funds, but something that we've been working on for over 7 years. We have finances to get it done, and the people that are in place to make sure that this happens, they're not just going to open the purse strings and just have at it. But we also have to take into consideration to account the time that we're in and what has happened because of this time that we're in. But trust that God is going to make it happen. With the reconstruction of the wall that Gladys showed, it just didn't happen overnight. He couldn't have got any of it done if the king had not provided the resources to get it done. This will not happen overnight. It's taken 7 years for it to happen, and God has provided the resources for us to do it. We just have to trust and believe God will see us through.
And have the will to stay the course.
To stay the course, yes. Despite the naysayers, despite those that don't want to see, that don't want it to go, it's got to move. It has to. Just from the amount of work that Miss Judy has put into the mission. From the feeding. It has to happen. And from that little piece, the rest of us are going to be busy tending to the souls that need to be healed, mended, and saved over there. Once we take care of the physical, the spiritual is going to happen with no problem. So I'm going to continue to delegate. Y'all continue to use your hands and feet for God. And in a few months, we're gonna harvest the fruits of what God has brought to us, or what God is going to bring to us. But it's going to start with us building each other up, because we have to make sure that we're healthy. So we've got to lift each other up. We've got to keep God in the forefront of everything that we do. Amen.
Amen.
And we still need volunteers to start packing up and taking stuff over to those 2 storage sheds.
Once they give us a timeline of when they're ready, we'll get it all done.
Actually, we could probably even start now because we aren't using the kitchen for anything.
Do we need straw boxes or?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so,
Tackle boxes from the baby.
Ms. Judy, if you'll close us in prayer, please.
Oh.
Dear Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for opening our eyes to so many things that we take for granted. Thank you for this pastor who is delegating and who is getting people up on their feet and going and getting this church revived. Thank you for our friendships and our love of you and the fact that we are free to be able to worship you and to tell other people about you without fear of retribution. Guide us all on our way this week, Lord, and let us be your servants. Amen.
Amen.
See you at church.